Straw Hut Media.
Hey Rewinders, it's your host Mark J. Parker, a movie lover, movie maker, movie celebrator, and you're listening to Release Date Rewind, a podcast about movie anniversaries. Thank you for either listening on the Straw Hut Media Network or watching on YouTube. Each episode, I bring on a friend to chat with me about a movie we love that's hitting a milestone anniversary. And my theme for the month of November is nannies. Thanksgiving is coming up fast here in the States, so many of you are seeing your families, and boy, do we have a family to talk about in this episode. We're discussing the creepy, the kooky, the altogether ooky Addams Family in the great sequel, Addams Family Values, for its 30th anniversary this month. That's right, it's one of those times on the show where I'm just skipping over the original and focusing on the sequel, part 2. Personal fun fact about this movie, when I got married at a real camp, a real summer camp, we put up a different movie poster at each cabin on site and renamed them the title of the movie. And because Camp Chippewa is so memorable in this movie, we had an Addams Family Values cabin. So Jason Kashiwagi, who has been a guest on this show in the past, was in that cabin with some other friends. So shout out Jason. Okay, now everybody, there are no secrets on this show, so we spoil everything. If you haven't seen this movie or it's been a while and you need to rewatch, you can catch it on Paramount Plus right now, and the first film is currently on Netflix if you want to rewatch that as well. Da-da-da-dum. 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 All right, Addamses and Jellinskys, it's turkey time, and it's time to rewind. Okay, everybody, I am so excited. This is someone I've been following for a while, a fellow podcaster doing great stuff talking about these classic movies we all love and we all grew up with. Please, everybody, welcome Jackie Conley from No More Late Fees. Hello, Jackie.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm so excited because we were chatting a while ago, earlier this year, and I was like, hey, I'd love to have you on my show. I think you guys featured a little promo about this show on your show, which was amazing. Thank you for that. So I was like, okay, you guys need to come on my show. What do you want to talk about? I forget which options I gave you, but Addams Family Values was one of them. And you were like, okay, that's the one. That sign me up. And I was like, talk to you in November. And here we are. Somehow it's already almost Thanksgiving, which is crazy. Yes. What are you doing for Thanksgiving?
My niece is flying for the first time. She's 2.5. So my sister and her family are coming to Texas to visit us. And so she's been watching a lot of YouTube videos on like what to expect on airplanes and all of that stuff. So I'm very excited. It's her first trip.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Now, where in Texas are you?
I'm in Austin.
You're in Austin. Cool.
Yes.
I went there once. Really liked it. Very cool. Have you been there for a long time? Have you grown up there and everything? Or
I did not grow up here. I grew up in South Florida where Danielle lives. But I got out of Florida as fast as I could and somehow escaped to Texas. But I have been
Austin's
here.
Better. So you're good.
Austin is a nice little bubble.
Yeah.
And I've been here almost 17 years.
Wow, amazing. Yes. Oh my gosh. Did you go to school in Austin or college or?
No, it was after I graduated college. I followed a boy here and luckily we're still together. So
wow. Oh wow, look at you. I love that. 17 years later. Wow, you're like the Felicity of the South. You didn't go from California to New York. You went from Florida to Texas to follow that Scott Speedman of yours. Oh my gosh. Wouldn't we all, right? It's tempting for sure. If I went to school with Scott Speedman, I'd be like, okay, where are you going to school? Let me work out the miles, right? That's amazing. Oh, well, Jackie did mention Danielle. Danielle couldn't be here tonight, but anyone who's listening who doesn't know, Jackie, I want you to tell us all about No More Late Fees, your great podcast. Danielle couldn't be here. She's sick, but the two of you do this podcast. We were talking about it just offline a second ago, bi-weekly. We're commiserating over all the workload that us podcasters do, but we love it. You talk about movies, mostly of the 90s and early 2000s, right?
Yes, absolutely. So Danielle and I met in 10th grade. And then eventually I started working at Blockbuster, and then I got her a job during the summer. So then we became coworkers too. She will self-admittedly say she was the worst employee. She, she, she was fine as long as the customers were okay, but as soon as they started like copping attitude, she gave it right back. And me
she's
as
like
her
me. She's like me. I'd be like, excuse me? But
exactly.
So were you her manager since you brought her
I
on?
was.
Oh, wow. Boss Jackie. So how was that for you dealing with, her not liking customer attitude?
I would get called over, and I would just, there's the district manager's phone number, and I would just walk away. Like, I'm not about to try and diffuse her. I've known her a long time. It's only going to make the situation worse. So we're just gonna you can take your movies and go. And if you have a grievance, call that number.
Yeah, you're like, walk away. Everyone walk away. Now, okay, so then but you guys were friends before Blockbuster.
Yes.
So when did you first meet?
In the English class in 10th grade. We were sat in alphabetical order, and so there was this guy that sat behind me. So I sat behind Danielle. He sat behind me. I was absent one day, and he moved to the desk behind Danielle, my desk. And I guess he just bothered her the entire class period. So the next day when I got back, she turned around and told me, never be absent again. And I knew in that moment I had a choice to make. Either this girl was now my best friend and would like defend me to the end, or I was going to make a sworn enemy. So I chose the former.
Yes. And years later, you have a great popular podcast. So tell me about the podcast. Anyone who's listening who doesn't know, tell us what do you guys talk about? What do you do? Fill us in.
Sure. So when we were talking about starting a podcast, we decided we both have a mutual love of movies that our dads instilled in us.
Love that. Same. Me too. Yes. My dad. Love that.
And so we decided we were going to focus on when we were in high school and college, which was 95 to 2005. And so, No More Late Fees was born, and it was kind of born out of this Blockbuster era that we both were vastly consumed in. I ended up working at Blockbuster for 7.5 years.
Wow, good for you. Yeah. That is so cool. I don't know why, Jackie. I have no idea why I didn't work at a video store. In hindsight, that would have been so cool. I'm sure you had not so cool days, but what was it like? It
was a lot of fun. You are with very like-minded people.
Yeah.
Like the Randys of the world.
Oh my God, my people. I always wondered, like, would it be cooler to work a video store or a movie theater? And for years I was thinking movie theater, but I don't know. Actually, as I get older, I'm like, no, I think it's video store. Yeah. Not as much like cleaning, moving around. It's all right there. It's like a beautiful library of all these movie moments, right? Like
exactly. Yep. And so, we would just have a ball, and it was really fun when like customers would come in and ask for recommendations, or because I'm always up for trivia. If a customer came in and was like, I'm looking for this movie and it has the guy from Batman in it, and like you only got breadcrumbs, and then you're like, okay, let me think about this, and you're just like, oh, is it this? Is it Multiplicity? And they're like, yes, that's it. I'm like, cool.
There's a lot of the guy that plays Batman and Andy McDowell.
Exactly.
Like, right? Oh, that's so fun. That's almost like a great game. I never thought about like walk into a video store and you don't know what it's called, but you think of the memories. It's basically like talking to my mom about movies. It's like that girl, the blonde, and you're like, which one? My mom just the other day, I posted this on my personal Instagram. I just visited my parents for a little early Thanksgiving because driving down to the Philadelphia area from Maine, Thanksgiving weekend, I can't do that anymore. Ugh. The traffic is going to kill me. Yes. But so I just saw them, and I was wearing my Winona Ryder Beetlejuice t-shirt. And I showed my parents for the first time Hereditary, which was an interesting watch for them. But so I'm wearing my Lydia Dietz t-shirt, and my parents are like, who is that? Oh, that's a scary movie. I'm like, well, it's not really scary, but we've watched this many times. Speaking of about our dad showing us movies, Dad,
Yes.
you and I have quoted this movie since birth. And finally they're like, oh, Beetlejuice. And my mom literally said, Jackie, she goes, I couldn't believe this. I was shocked and offended and enraged. She goes, whatever happened to Winona Ryder? After Beetlejuice, her career just sort of fizzled. We all were like, even my dad looked at her like, what are you talking about? We all shouted Stranger Things because that's the biggest, most recent hit. I'm like, Little Women, Edward Scissorhands. I mean, Mom, the list goes on. Even like Mr. Deeds. I mean, what?
Yes.
And she just looks at me. She's like, oh. I'm like, Mom, that's bad. She was nominated for 2 Oscars after that. Come on. So anyway, I went on a little tangent.
My mind always goes to when she guest starred on Friends as Rachel's sorority sister.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I forgot I mean, wow, Friends really had everyone guest. I was just looking at a list of all their Thanksgiving episodes, and it's just amazing. Oh my God.
Yes.
But anyway, so I have to admit, I loved Blockbuster, but we were a bit more, because we lived closer to it, and I don't know how you feel about this. Tell me, be honest. We were a little bit more of a Hollywood Video family. How do you feel about that?
It is A-okay with me. Some of my dearest, oldest friends, they worked at a Hollywood Video. And so there is no bad blood. We all experienced the same thing.
Yeah. Just different colors, different themes, that. But I do have, maybe you can actually see it. Oh, barely. But behind me, you'll see some little games. There's my finger there. There's a Ghostface game. And behind that is a Blockbuster game. I'll show it to you before we go. But an amazing, you probably have it, a great Blockbuster. Yep. It's basically like charades and all that. Have you played that?
I have. Unfortunately, it's not met with as much enthusiasm by other people that is when I suggest playing it. Aww. So, or I'm like, come on, this movie. And they're like, we don't know. I was like, I need Danielle here.
Seriously, I know. I'm right there with you. When certain friends, you're like, yes, we're going to play this for hours. And other friends, you're like, King Kong, right? And they're like, oh, and it's like, okay, this isn't working. I know. I've been there. I have so many different little movie games and so few friends that will seriously play them. So whenever I'm in Austin, I'll ring you up. We'll play.
Absolutely.
We'll play all day. Awesome.
Yes.
Well, let's rewind, Jackie. Let's rewind. Enough of modern day chatter, everybody. We're going back 30 years ago to November 1993. It was November 19th, 1993. That is when one of the best sequels ever, at least one of the funniest sequels, came out in theaters across America, and that is Addams Family Values. Now, Jackie, did you see this in theaters? What's your memory of your first time view?
I don't remember. I'm assuming we saw it in theaters. We saw everything in theaters. Every Saturday we went to the movies as a family. So I'm almost 100% positive that we saw it in the theaters, but this was a staple of my childhood. We watched it often. And who doesn't love Christina Ricci? So,
oh my gosh, goddess.
She was, I was the right age to really grow up with Christina Ricci. Yep. And so it was amazing.
Yeah. What grade do you think you were at this time? Do you remember, fall 93? What do you think?
I probably was in going into 6th grade.
Okay. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So Christina Ricci, right at that right age. And this was before, of course, she really started. I mean, she started blowing up kind of immediately. I mean, she's in Mermaids with Cher. She's in these back-to-back huge movies, right? Playing an iconic character. Now, speaking of the character Wednesday, what do you think of the Netflix show? Have you watched?
I have watched that twice. I really enjoy it.
Twice, the whole season.
The whole season.
Oh my gosh,
twice.
We have a fan. Okay, Jackie. Yes. So I should continue watching it. I've only no shade at all. I've only had time to watch the first episode like a year ago, whenever that came out, and I just got sidetracked. So I should continue.
Yes, I think storytelling wise, I think it's a really, really good show from start to finish. They sprinkle the clues. It's kind of a whodunit through the season, which I love. And then we get our girl Christina Ricci again as one of the teachers.
And isn't that, I mean, it's so perfect, but isn't it crazy, and you probably know this, that was not originally supposed to be Christina. It was going to be Thora Birch, right?
Yes.
Another 90s star and Christina's co-star in Now and Then, one of the best. I'm sure. Have you guys talked about Now and Then on your show?
We have.
Yeah, right? Oh my God, yes. I thought so. But yeah, how crazy. Thora Birch, and then something's always going on with Thora Birch, but she couldn't do it. And then Christina, and it's like, wait, Christina should have always been in the show, 100%. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, and I love Jenna Ortega. So I do need to continue because it looks so fun and it is fun. And it's funny, I actually not only rewatched Addams Family Values to chat with you, but I wanted to rewatch the first one too, because it had been so long. And they're such a great double feature, a nice hour and a half each. I mean, what can you ask for, right? And it's funny, like watching it, it feels so Tim Burton-y, so Tim Burton-esque. So it's so funny years later for him to now be, helming the Wednesday show. It's like, that feels totally right.
Yes, absolutely.
Although Barry Sonnenfeld has done an amazing job with these films, I think. Both of them.
They were
right?
The really interesting thing about Addams Family is like it shouldn't work for like the general public. It's these like kids trying to kill a baby, and it's like this nanny that's a black widow that's trying to kill the young. Like it's bananas when you think about it, just in like layman's terms. But it has such heart, and like the characters are so endearing. And then at the end of the day, the family just really, really loves each other.
Yep. They just want to be together. They want Fester back. I mean, really in both movies, they want Fester back.
Yes.
Fester's always like going missing, but, and Wednesday and Pugsley, they hate summer camp so much. They just want to go back home. It is actually really, really heartwarming, actually, for such a twisted, movie and family. They just want each other. It's so sweet, right?
Gomez.
Cara mia.
Marvelous news. I'm going to have a baby. Right now.
Okay, well, before we talk about the movie even more, I'm going to set the scene for you, Jackie, okay? So this, everybody, is what was going on back in November 1993, 30 years ago, all right? On the news side, sorry to bring him up, but I just thought this was an interesting little fun fact. Just earlier this month, it was like November 2nd, Rudy Giuliani had just become the mayor of New York. So that was like a big deal for New York. He cleaned it up. My mom was like, oh, he cleaned up New York, blah, blah, blah. So that's what all of our parents were talking about. He was the new mayor of New York. On the music side, the top song was Meatloaf's I Would Do Anything for Love. What do you think about that, Jackie? Are you a fan?
It's such a banger. I had this cassette single.
Wow. Do you?
It was so good.
It was such a moment. Although, am I wrong to think it sounds older than 1993?
It
or
does.
Do you feel, right? It feels older than that. 80s.
It does.
Right?
Yeah, but I think all of his music just sounds like it's in the same time period. So I think if you go like Paradise by the Dashboard Light, which is actually in the 70s, straight into I Would Do Anything for Love, like there's no... Yeah. It's all very contiguous.
You're so right. That's a really good point. It's kind of all timeless. Yeah.
Yes.
It's funny. I'm remembering randomly that I worked with him on The Celebrity Apprentice years ago, his season. And he was not a handful, but he was a lot. But they all were. That was like Gary Busey, Star Jones, Nene Leakes. I mean, everyone was a lot. Anyway, but fun fact, Meatloaf. So he was the number one song back in 1993. On the TV side, The Nanny we were just talking about the SAG strike before starting.
Yes.
With our God, Fran Drescher, love her so much. So that had just started airing on CBS, and I blew my pop culture mind. I didn't realize that right around the same day this movie came out, Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Ryan Gosling, and Christina Aguilera had just joined the cast of the Disney Channel reboot, The New Mickey Mouse Club. I didn't realize it was 1993, right?
And our lives were never the same.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, and I then did a deep dive, and I'll let you know what I was deep diving into. New Mickey Mouse Club. I was like, okay, well, what about JC? What about Kerry Russell? They were on the show earlier than those four. Those four all started, I guess, the last season of the show which is crazy. It was all just one season. But Carrie was like, she started in 1991. Same with like JC, right around there. So they had already been on it. And then in come these famous four on that Mickey Mouse Club. Oh my God. I can still hear like little Ryan Gosling, a little Brittany. Like Brittany had like a deep voice, I remember, right? Soulful, right? So they had just started. That was airing. And now on the movie side, obviously Addams Family came in at number 1. Addams Family Values came in at number 1. Big deal. But other popular movies right around this time, The Three Musketeers, which I love. Do you remember that one?
I do.
Chris O'Donnell, Kiefer Sutherland.
I had an obsession for a little while with that movie.
Me too. I was very into like Three Musketeers. The year later was Little Women. Very much into like period pieces and kind of writing my own little fan fiction sequels. I don't know why. So nerdy, but I liked my like historical fiction. But yes, I do love The Three Musketeers. I just want to rewatch that, not for the podcast, but just for fun one day over Thanksgiving, right? We had that. We had Carlito's Way was a big deal. The movie My Life with going back to Michael Keaton and Nicole Kidman. We had The Nightmare Before Christmas, which I just talked about on this show. That was, of course, a big deal. We didn't know our lives would be changed with that great animated film. We had The Piano with, not Jodie Foster.
Mrs. Incredible.
Yes. Why am I thinking Jodie Foster? It's so not Jodie. It's Holly Hunter.
Yes.
I should remember that because I met her long ago and I was not a fan at a show I used to work on. Yeah, she wasn't the warmest, but that's okay. Everyone has their bad days. No shade. Look Who's Talking Now, Kirstie Alley, John Travolta, and Rudy with Sean Astin. Those were all in like top 10 at this time. Hearing all those titles, what are you thinking? What are you feeling, Jackie?
Look Who's Talking Now is such an underrated movie.
I agree.
It is a family favorite. We watch it every Christmas. We can quote it. It is. Amazing. We are obsessed as a family with Look Who's Talking Now.
I love that. I love that so much because that's the one. There were 3 of them, right? There was Look Who's Talking 2,
and Look Who's Talking Now.
And then Now. And Now also introduces the dogs. Am I right?
Yes.
That's Now. Oh, yeah. Yes. That's the one I know the most. I think because also we were of that age where like now I was like really into movies. I could remember things. So yeah, that's the one I know the most. And I love that you love it. And I love that you're reminding me it is technically a Christmas movie.
Yes.
Right?
It is.
Yeah. Gotta rewatch
they
that
take
one.
all the Christmas presents to the ladies' cabin in the woods.
That's
with
right.
The dogs.
Yes. And she's dancing. I'll never forget. She's dancing with John Travolta, and that's the first time I ever heard slow, quick, slow. So weird how my brain just. But I'm like, oh, is that okay? That's what you like do to keep the beat. Got it. So dumb.
Are you in unbearable pain? My darling, is it torture?
Oui.
It's a boy. It's a girl.
Go ahead!
What news? Father, what is it?
It's an Addams.
In your own words, give me the elevator pitch. It doesn't need to be very long. I'm the Hollywood executive. You have this idea. What is Addams Family Values about?
The movie is so bonkers. It's hard to.
Yeah.
So a very loving family that lives in a Victorian mansion that may need some spring cleaning.
Yeah.
They have a new baby. They hire a nanny. The nanny gets rid of the older children and is secretly trying to marry the rich uncle for his money. And things don't go as she had planned. Poor Debbie.
Poor Debbie. She did not get by with this one. This was what? Husband number 3, I think? Yes.
I think so.
Although it's funny because during her, I know I'm jumping ahead, but during her big, final scene, that amazing Malibu Barbie, right? I mean, that's the Barbie sequel we need. We need Joan Cusack to be Malibu Barbie. I mean, it's a no-brainer, right?
Malibu Barbie. Malibu Barbie.
The nightmare.
The nerve.
During all that, she's showing the slides, very Rebecca Gayheart in Urban Legend, which I've talked about. She's got her clicker, and she talks about husband 1, husband 2, and then I think she says husband 3. But then earlier, when the kids are at camp trading the serial killer cards, and they have the Black Widow, I think they say 3 husbands, and I think they even say that on the news broadcast. There are, she has different names, if you remember.
Yeah.
You're right. So the details get a little murky there, but Fester's like husband 3 or 4 doesn't make a big difference, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, she's the Black Widow. And, I have to ask, Jackie, it's not super clear, and I just rewatched the first movie. How does Fester have all this money and is on the cover of Forbes magazine? Do you know?
I don't. I know
we're not supposed to care.
When she's in the house, she's going through, I think they just have family money because she's going through like bonds and certificates and things like that.
Right.
Which
She's
to
got all
me
that
scream
stuff.
old-timey money.
Yes, old-timey. Yes, exactly. Stocks and bonds, and it's all these old papers. Yes, and that's where Wednesday's like incognito in the wall. That's
the wallpaper.
Right? So funny. Yes, exactly. Because I was trying to remember, and I guess it's just sort of a nod to, what happens in the first film, the original, is much like we were saying. Fester's missing. We don't really know why he's missing. They're looking for long-lost Fester. Here comes this mother-son crook team. They're working closely with Dan Hedaya, who plays the family lawyer, who's crooked himself. You're right. And they want to steal the money in the house. So yeah, the Addamses are just wealthy. It just doesn't show. And so now at the end of that first film, which is also so good, but I do think the second one is better. Do you agree?
I agree.
Right? I think we're just going for all out sassy, biting humor, that dialogue. Whereas the first one, we have great humor, but it's a little classic Addams. The sequel kind of like, brings it completely to the 90s, I feel like,
Yeah. It's just a little bit more unhinged, which just adds to the enjoyment of the movie.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Yeah. And we'll get into it in a sec for sure. But yeah, so they wanted the money, and long story short, if anyone forgets, Fester, or well, quote unquote Fester, this guy pretending to be him actually is him and was like brainwashed by the mom. So kind of crazy, but so that was Fester all along. So there you go.
It was very much an Anastasia moment.
Yes, well said. Very Anastasia, a far less pretty Anastasia.
Yes.
And so happy ending there. And at the end of the first movie, Morticia reveals she's pregnant. So now we're picking up. Not much time has passed because now Morticia's given birth at the start of this movie, right? And I love how Raul Julia, oh my God, he's so good as Gomez. This cast is so solid, right? They're so good.
100%. Yeah, like there is not a poor casting choice to be made. And the amount of talent they got in this movie, even for like just like walk on, walk off roles.
Yep, one-line roles,
impressive.
absolutely.
Yes.
All the little cameos, some you don't even realize they're there.
Yes.
And we'll talk about them, but like, every role perfectly cast. And I should have looked up the casting director. We have time. I'll look them up. Drum roll, please. It is David Rubin. A guy named David Rubin, who had also, he cast some good stuff. Big Little Lies, Talented Mr. Ripley, Men in Black, which Barry Sonnenfeld also went on to direct. So he knows what he's doing. Great casting, right? I just feel like Christopher Lloyd especially is so perfect as Fester in both films, and just all the facial expressions and how he is completely committed to his role. It's amazing. He had to be so exhausted, right?
And so sweaty with all of that padding on.
Yes, the crazy, his chest starts like up here, right? And how he's moving around, and he is, they all are so fantastic. But the guys especially, I just want to shout out because Gomez and Fester are overdoing it. Of course, Debbie. Morticia, Angelica Houston is amazing, but she doesn't have to, a little goes a long way with Morticia. She's got that down, and the light always shining on her eyes.
On her eyes.
It's so funny.
Paramount Pictures invites you to welcome the new arrival.
Hey, kiddo.
Did you see that? This is Miss Jellinsky, our new nanny. What do we say?
Be afraid.
Let me quickly just talk about what everyone was up to in their careers at this point. I'll just talk about a few of them. We won't talk about everyone, right? But so we mentioned Barry Sonnenfeld. He came back from directing the first film. Now he's directing the sequel. And Jackie, maybe you knew this, but my mind was kind of blown. The first Addams Family from 2 years prior was his first feature film as director. I had no idea. Crazy, right? That's a big undertaking. Nailed it. Exactly. So he did that. In between both films, he made a film with Michael J. Fox called For Love or Money. That was in 1992. So before directing Addams Family, because you might be thinking, wait, how did this newcomer get this directing gig? I never knew. He was a big time DP. He was a director of photography in movies like Misery, When Harry Met Sally, Big, Raising Arizona, going back to Holly Hunter. So he had shot some big movies in the 80s and into the early 90s before switching to director. So I had no idea. That's pretty cool. That's a career. Yeah. You know? And fun fact, I sort of worked with him. I mean, I say I worked with him, but I didn't. I was one of the many extras for like a week. I was a man in black on Men in Black 3. So I do remember nerding out a little bit, seeing Barry Sonnenfeld there. I was like, whoa. And Rick Baker, like makeup, special effects makeup god right there. I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. Too bad the movie wasn't so great, but, you know, cool experience, right?
Excellent.
So let me move on now to the writer, Paul Rudnick. And we were just talking about how much we love this dialogue, right? I mean, he knocked it out of the park. Different writer than the first film. So they changed voices. He had just written Sister Act and had written Sister Act 2, which is coming out a month after this, just a few weeks later. So he was really having a moment. Now it's funny. Fun fact about him, he went under a pseudonym for Sister Act 1 and 2. I'm not totally sure why. I've talked about Sister Act on the show. I guess he wasn't totally happy with like the changes because like many of these big scripts, they go through different rounds of revision. So I guess he didn't want his name on it, right?
Was Carrie Fisher a ghostwriter on Sister Act?
Exactly. Yes, she was. Yeah. So maybe they clashed. I don't know. There were a few writers, but he is credited, quote unquote, as Joseph Howard in Sister Act 1 and 2. So, I mean, I don't think you should be ashamed, Paul Rudnick. No. I think you have a great trio of movies. Sister Act 1, Addams Family 2, Sister Act 2. Are you kidding? Sign me up. You're speaking my language, right? Absolutely. So he had done those movies. He was also still pretty young in his career. He went on to work on First Wives Club, some really great, movies. Stepford Wives, the remake, which I kind of have a soft spot for.
Scream if you need anything.
And now let's just talk about briefly our lead actors. We won't have to talk about them all, but Angelica Houston as Morticia. What do you think of her, Jackie? Do you love her in this role? Because I feel like this was my sort of, I guess I started with her in The Witches a couple years prior, which is iconic. But I feel like between The Witches and Morticia, that is how I personally was introduced to Angelica Houston. What do you think of her in this role?
Yeah, I think they could not have cast this particular role any better than they did. Right. Like Angelica Houston was Morticia Addams, especially coming off of The Witches, because I feel like The Witches is just like if Morticia had like taken a wrong turn somewhere, it could have easily ended up in Witches. But yes,
I hear you.
Perfect casting.
Perfect, right? She looks the part. Her voice. I mean, those mannerisms, the little eyebrow, It's funny. I had forgotten how sexual Morticia and Gomez are in their really twisted way, pain and all that. And she's like, tonight, so it's
I'll get
funny.
The ball and chain.
Yes, exactly. The old ball and chain.
So you still desire me after all this time? The old ball and chain.
Forever.
I'll get them.
So she was already an Oscar winner by this point. She had just, in between 1 and 2, she did The Player, Manhattan Murder Mystery, and The Band Played On, a great TV movie. So she was super busy at this time. We have the late, great Raul Julia as Gomez. We were just talking about him. This was his last on-screen role while he was still alive. He died less than a year later. So sad. And it's weird, Jackie. I had always heard, and I didn't realize it's like a rumor. I guess it was never confirmed that I heard he died of AIDS, but actually he died of complications of a stroke. That is the reported death.
Really?
Right? Did you also hear about AIDS?
I
or HIV?
It was very muddy. Like,
Yeah.
I just heard like he passed away soon after this movie was released.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's sad. And then I think my mom was like, yeah, he was pretty young. And then we moved on.
Yeah. So he was only in his early 50s, I think. And I saw, maybe you did too, when you were Googling that, like, Angelica Houston had said that it was obvious his health was declining while making this film, which is so sad. Oh, he's such a powerhouse, my God. And I didn't really know much of his work, especially not when we were kids. But even to this day, I need to do more Raul Julia watching because he's such a powerful actor, you know? So good.
He really is.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't notice from a viewer point of view that he was ill. Like he nailed the role and never looked like he was tired or sick. So
Yep, absolutely. I know he hit it well. So that was Raul. He had one more movie, which came out the year later with Jean-Claude Van Damme, Street Fighter. I remember that was sort of a big deal, at least in my kid brain, you know. Moving on to Christopher Lloyd, like we were saying, another powerhouse guy, excellent as Fester. He had just done right before the same year a movie I love, and maybe you love it too, Dennis the Menace.
Yes.
I have such a soft spot for Dennis the Menace. He was a creepy bad guy, freaked me out. But he did that in 93. That was a fun one. Of course, you know, best known for his roles in Back to the Future and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Those were in the 80s into the early 90s, you know, and now another great franchise for him, Addams Family. I mean, what do you think of him in this role? Because like you were saying, like, I can't think of anyone else. He is so perfect.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. Like, I was probably like maybe 20, 25 minutes into the movie where I was like, oh yeah, that's Christopher Lloyd. Because he just like disappears into Fester. And like, even though like it's his voice, it's his mannerism, you know, a Christopher Lloyd when you see him, but he does such a good job of disappearing into the character where it's just like, oh no, that's just Fester.
Yep, absolutely. I know. It's crazy. I know. For the longest time, I think I didn't realize that was Christopher Lloyd. I'm like, oh, you know, because it's funny how just the dark makeup around the eyes and it's like he doesn't have much on his face, but whoa, he becomes someone else, right?
Yeah.
God, I feel like even though he's in these major movies we just mentioned, I feel like he doesn't get enough recognition as he should. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like that guy, he's a star, baby. So we have him, and last but not least, we got to talk about Miss Debbie Jellinsky, Joan Cusack. I mean, whoa, what a role. She is excellent in everything, but like, I'm so happy that people love this movie because this is one of the highlights of her career. And she also was already Oscar nominated for Working Girl up until this. So we got lots of like awards, big stars. What do you make of Joan Cusack in this movie?
Oh, she is everything I wished I was when I was little. Like, just slightly unhinged. Like, she was a go-getter. She had a plan. She was executing the plan pretty well until she met Fester, who just wouldn't die.
He just won't die.
She liked to shop. She had this beautiful mansion. Everything top notch.
Right? Like, she is both goals and like anti-goals.
Yes.
You're like, okay, I want that part and then that part no. Like the pros and cons are real extreme, real strong, right? And also, I had forgotten, like, she's so beautiful. She is such a babe in this movie as well. You know, she is painted. She's blonde. She's got the pastels on, right? Debbie, pastels, right? Pink
Get out
and
of my
white
house.
Oh my gosh. So good. So good. He hates your guts. She's just Joan Cusack. And, you know, I've talked about Joan in her another Oscar nominated role in and Out, another great 90s movie. Talked about that a year ago. I mean, Joan Cusack, another one that's kind of shockingly a little underrated because she is such a powerhouse and such a comedic genius. Like, I just wonder, did Barry Sonnenfeld even need to really direct her much, or just because she just barks some of these lines? Like, her intonations are like so memorable, you know? Fester, get over here, you know?
I would love to know, like, what was actually on the page and what was improv. I'm always super interested in that because my brain doesn't think that way. Like, I will have a comeback for you maybe like 2 days later. I'm like, oh, I should have said this. So it's always super interesting when you hear about these movies where they're allowed creative license while sticking to the script. And like the dialogue that needs to just be said, but then they have room to play.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I can just imagine her if she was allowed to just have put Joan into Debbie a little bit.
Yes. I should know this because I've actually, the scene where the kids are dropped off at camp and, Morticia has that great line, oh, they're smiling, they're happy. Help them, and then Wednesday says to Amanda, who Amanda's back from the first one. She was the Girl Scout, a little cameo, a little small role, and now she's, the villain, one of the villains. The blondes are not good people to trust in this movie, right? But she says, why are you dressed like a funeral? And, Wednesday says, wait, like just great stuff. I've selected that scene because I teach acting classes. And so sometimes with my kids' classes, I've given that scene to a couple kids. So I should keep reading the script because it's online. We should totally look through.
Why are you dressed like somebody died? Wait.
But yeah, I have a vibe like you. I bet you Joan was able to play here and there. And if she wasn't, wow. Or she didn't have to, Paul, excellent work. I mean, wow. But yeah, so Joan in her career, like I said, she was already nominated for an Oscar for Working Girl. She had been a thing, of course. And the year prior, she was in that very strange movie with Robin Williams, Toys. Do you remember Toys? Yeah. Such a weird movie, right? And she, I think, was like a human-sized toy, if I remember correctly. She was very, like, robotic. Weird movie.
Yes.
So she did that, and now this. Still a weird movie. She had her niche, but this, was a little more embraced. Of the weirdness was embraced. Toys was a little too out there, for me at least.
Yes.
But no, so Jackie, now that we've talked about them, we could go on and on. A lot of returning cast members, both prominent like Christina Ricci, like Pugsley, and then even small characters. They brought back, like we just were saying, Mercedes McNabb, who was on Buffy years later, right, as Amanda. They brought back, even I noticed like the one cousin is in from the first film who's dancing with... I forget who he's dancing with, but he's got tall hair. He's in the back of the wedding. Did you notice him?
Yes.
He's even back. I was actually looking at him like, do we have the twins, the Siamese twins from the first film?
They were there.
Were they there
I remember.
too?
Yeah, I saw them in the wedding scene.
Yes.
As well.
It's amazing. It makes you wonder, like, are there deleted scenes and those characters have lines? Because that's so crazy to just bring them back for basically just glorified extra work. We even have Dana Ivey, who's so great. She plays Margaret, who's now married to Cousin It and has their baby. What? I like how Debbie's like, I didn't say anything. No, that's its name. So funny. But so we have lots of returning people. The only person that, we saw in the first film that did not come back for the sequel, who was recast, is Grandmama. This time, Carol Kane, the great Carol Kane, originally played by... I want to say her name's Judith Malina, something like that. I couldn't really get much intel on why they recast other than, I guess, she was older and they wanted, there was more work involved and they wanted a younger actress to play the role and just get, made up to look old. There's no real drama there from what I could tell. Kind of weird, but Carol Kane is so good in this movie. Oh my God. So
good. And she's actually currently on season 2 of Strange New Worlds, if you're a Star Trek fan.
Oh, is she? Okay,
she is.
Cool.
And so like she's fresh in my mind as I'm watching. I'm like, oh.
Yes. She's always popping up, right?
Yes.
I love that. Good for her because she's always been so interesting. And I'm a big fan of When a Stranger Calls and the sequel, which is underrated, When a Stranger Calls Back. If you want to see Carol Kane in a actually really creepy TV movie, like very Scream before Scream came out, check out When a Stranger Calls Back, everybody. Yes, that turned 30 earlier this year. But yeah, Carol Kane. So we got, like you were saying, perfectly cast. And now here is this great movie. So Jackie, tell me, in whatever, jump around. We don't have to go in order. When you think of Addams Family, what are your favorite scenes? Like what are lines, characters, moments? Tell me, what do you love about this movie?
So, all-time favorite scene, still recite it with my sister, is the Malibu Barbie.
Malibu Barbie.
I was a ballerina. I was graceful, delicate. They had to go. Like, it's just
delicate.
So good with the slides of her, like, as an angry child behind her, and then the house on fire.
Yes.
So good.
So twisted. And that whole scene. And also I just love how she was able to get the whole entire family into their separate electric chairs,
Yes.
It's just like, oh yeah, okay, she had no help whatsoever. I love it. I buy it. I believe it, right?
Oh, so good.
Like she even says like, oh yeah, like she's talking about her husbands, like we were just saying, right? And she says like her second husband was the politician and I couldn't get a new car. And he said, Deb, we got to set an example. Oh, yeah? Set this. It's so unhinged.
Well, and when she's going through that tirade, I'm like, wait, I thought you married them just to kill them for the money on your like wedding night. But now you're saying you had like these long-term relationships with them, but things didn't go your way. So then you murdered. I'm like, okay, the math's not mathing. Maybe it's just sensationalized news, and really she was just a disgruntled housewife.
Yeah, totally. Especially like at least the first one, the surgeon, it seemed like, she wasn't planning on killing him right off the bat. It happened over some time, it seemed, at least according to her great monologue, right? So but with Fester, she's like, okay, no, I'm not expecting anything other than your money, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But, and I love in that scene, she says, don't I deserve love and jewelry?
Isn't he a lady killer?
Acquitted.
Or like mid-movie where Fester's like, give me a kiss, and she's like, give me a 20.
Oh, iconic.
So good.
Absolutely. And that's also when I think he's wearing his absolutely bizarre wig, terrifying, that wig, and his blazer, his suit, at their mansion. She's trying to change him. Yeah, absolutely. So good. What else do you love?
The thing that stands out is the Thanksgiving play in the middle of summer ?
Yep.
Which was unhinged back then, but now is even more like so cultural appropriation and just it's so cringy when you watch it. But Wednesday is Pocahontas and staging a revolt at the first thing. It is iconic.
Right? It is iconic. It's beautiful. And I know what you mean. Yeah, it's a little like looking back on it, it's like, Wednesday's not native, but back at this time. And also it's like a school play. It's like you kind of just, you give, the only thing with the camp stuff that I don't think, again, it's so super funny. And Christine Baranski and Peter McNichol as the camp counselors are, honestly, Jackie, I am mad we never got a spin-off with them. Can you imagine? Like, even just like a little TV series, a little limited series with them. Like, I want to see them, and I want to see Wednesday and Pugsley and their friend Joel just terrorizing them for like 8 episodes. But yeah, like how they can't remember primarily like the people of color, their names. They're like, Jamal, I don't know how to say it. Whatever. I'm like, and they don't like, I wrote down the names, but like, that's a little like, okay, maybe not. But I do love what the creative team was going for, where this camp is like the village of the damned. Every kid is preppy and blonde and white. And like, here are other white kids, and a few people of color, but like they are not these golden, blonde kids, and they are like the ones that actually, are real. They're normal. We side with them, of course, because it's like this cult of kumbaya,
Yes.
It's so funny. Oh my
exactly.
God. But that Thanksgiving play, I know, I thought the same thing. I'm like, okay, it's the middle of summer, Thanksgiving, okay. And so actually that brings me to a question, Jackie. Would you say, this movie came out at Thanksgiving time, we have the Thanksgiving play. Is this a Thanksgiving movie? Would you
Because of the play, my brain has locked it in as a Thanksgiving movie, even though it happens nowhere around Thanksgiving. No. And I do send my friends the gif of Pugsley as the turkey saying, "Eat me." every year
Me.
on Thanksgiving.
I love that. It's so perfect. And on this latest rewatch, I really was actually like, observing all the choreography. Like those kids are dancing. They're doing little, step, touch, a little bit of like tap, It's really good. And the way Amanda, Mercedes McNabb, is just overdoing it as Sarah Miller. Like, it's just so funny. So campy.
Good. Yes.
And I love Joel's parents. Oh my God, another line that might be a little offensive. Actually, it is offensive. They say 20 grand for summer camp and he gets to play Mr. Woo Woo. It's
yes.
But she's so good. And the husband, Joel's dad, is actually Barry Sonnenfeld. I didn't know that until today.
He looked familiar.
He did.
But
not familiar
I can never
enough.
Place it. Yeah, exactly.
Because Barry Sonnenfeld kind of just looks like a normal guy. He's not, So I had no idea until just a little bit before talking to you that is Barry Sonnenfeld. Love
Interesting.
that. Yeah. So those are Joel's parents that he forces them to, during the chaos. I love how the kids not only are natives, not only revolt against, Gary and what's Gary's wife's name? Christine Baranski plays Becky, of course. How can I forget? Of course she's a Becky. Not only are they revolting against Gary and Becky and Amanda and all the preppy popular kids, but they're also revolting against like the audience of parents, like throwing pies in Amanda's mom and dad's faces. Like they're so great as well. Like, so that whole scene, and I can like mimic Amanda's screaming with the apple in her mouth as Wednesday's just slowly, the music's playing and she pulls the match out of her, the feather in her hair.
Yes.
And lights it, right? And then we hear da-da-da-da. It is truly iconic. Like I will be posting that whole scene on Thanksgiving Day on the Release Date Rewind podcast. So everyone, you have that to look forward to watching, right?
I will rewatch that scene every time it shows up in my feed. Like it is so good.
The new adventure.
Summer camp.
Life-saving! I'll be the victim. All your life.
Oh my God, I also forgot, speaking of the Thanksgiving play, it made me laugh out loud again, like all these years of rewatching it. When they're doing rehearsal, it's not yet the big show, but it's rehearsal, and Gary is getting so pissed off at the girl that's like catatonic, just zoning out. Oh my God, like something's wrong with her. But oh my God, happy turkey day. And she's just not moving. And he is so pissed, right? So funny. And he says, as everything's going wrong, doesn't he have a really funny line? He says, stop it. You're destroying my text. He cares so much about this play he wrote, Oh, so good. And I just love, I can feel Amanda's fear when Wednesday goes off script,
Yes.
Says, what? Gary, she's changing the words, right?
And she's always so like prim and polished and like, but then like as soon as that happens, like all the pretense falls away and she's just like, oh no.
Exactly. The Amanda
I'm not in control.
Yes, the Amanda that has had her way all these minutes in the movie until now, she gets what she deserves, right? She doesn't even like how, I forgot, she gets so offended when Wednesday is telling them in the bunk in the cabin about Fester marrying Debbie, the nanny. She goes, ew, the help? Get her out of here. Like, it's like, whoa,
We're not shy. We're contagious. I think their whole family's like some weird medical experiment.
Because again, this was before Casper. This was before Now and Then. Mm-hmm. So it's funny how like the producers, the writer, the director, they like gave Wednesday more to do in the sequel. They kind of knew Christina Ricci was like about to be a thing, Yeah. And it's a shame. I don't know whatever happened to Pugsley. I don't even know the actor's name. Do you know if he like went on to do anything else? It's surprising.
His name is Jimmy Workman. His IMDb picture is Pugsley, so I'm assuming maybe not a whole lot.
Yeah, maybe he
works in the transportation department now. It seems.
Okay, yeah, you're right. He's worked recently. Okay,
yeah.
Okay, so it's so interesting, especially kids of this time, because I remember one time I was working on an episode of Ugly Betty, and the first face I saw was the guy from Home Alone 1 and 2, but he also was in Pete and Pete on Nickelodeon, a redhead guy.
Oh,
I forget
yeah.
his name. He now does like, electrical stuff on set. Like he's like a gaffer grip. I thought he was in the episode. I was like, oh, Pete and Pete. I'm like, wait, he was not. He now. So it's funny how some actors that were like child stars of this era, went on to do like crew work, and that's cool too,
Yeah.
And David Krumholtz as Joel. I mean, the three of them are such a great little trio of misfits, right?
Yes.
And it's so funny how I just forgot like his accent. He's so like Natasha Lyonne, like the two of them need to be, if they haven't worked together, but he sounds like Natasha Lyonne like now. Like I don't know if he has such a, I'm sure he can do it, but I don't know if he sounds so much like that now as he's older, right? But the two of them need to do something.
Because even in 10 Things I Hate About You, which is not that much, I mean, it's 6 years later, but like the accent was toned out, but they were also supposed to be in Seattle, so the accent wouldn't have made sense.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah, I forgot. He's another great cast. Oh my God, I'll be talking about that. I can't believe that'll be 25 next year. Whoa. Wow. Yeah, and actually you bring up a good point. Wow, like, I mean, obviously it happens to all of us, but just when you're looking at actors and seeing them age, like, whoa, just from 93 to 99, David Krumholtz grew up. Like,
yes,
he is like a proper young adult in 10 Things I Hate About You. And in this movie, he's still just like, I don't know, 12, 13. Like, he's such a kid,
Yep.
I'll never forget you.
You won't?
You're too weird.
Camp Chippewa. Oh my God, it's brilliant. And I had forgotten we kind of get like two movies in one because we're going back and forth between The Reign of Debbie and then Wednesday, and Pugsy being stuck in camp. Like we are definitely bouncing back and forth and it feels good. There's no dull moment in this one.
No.
I don't think, right?
No, I can't think of a scene that is just there to like progress like story or whatever, like it just,
even the first movie was, I think it's so solid, but there's a moment or two where I'm like, I check my phone or I'm like kind of, like I think when they kind of get kicked out of their house and they're in a motel, if you remember that part towards like, towards, as we're getting towards Act 3, I'm like, okay, this is fast. This to me flows so well because we have great villains, great problems, and like we said, such great lines.
And the stork flew down from heaven and turned into a baby.
Our parents had sex.
The end song by Tag Team.
Oh my God.
Like the Whoomp, the Addams Family, there it is, where they just took Whoomp, there it is, and just put Addams Family in it.
And the song starts something like, I'm going to paraphrase, but it's sort of like, sometime later, the three go to camp. That's Pugsley Wednesday. Like, it's just like, they're basically just kind of retelling the movie as a rap.
Exactly.
I need someone to do that. Like, there needs to be like a talent show or something, and someone's got to do the rap from Addams Family Values. Yes. And I forget, they also did the song for Addams Family 1. Right? I think so.
No, MC Hammer did.
Oh, that was MC Hammer. You're right.
This was this really weird era where we got end songs by like popular artists, like popular R&B or like rap artists.
Or hip hop. Absolutely.
Exactly. Because we get Vanilla Ice at the end of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2. Like it was just very interesting how they're like, how this family movie needs to end with a rap.
Right. And it's like, okay, yeah, I like that. Right. I know, it's so funny. There are other movies I can't even think of right now, but yeah, the early 90s for big movies like this, like, fun, especially kind of family entertainment. Yeah. They all ended with a rap from someone that was pretty prominent, who might not be so prominent anymore, But speaking of music, and it's funny because he gets a little moment in the movie. Apparently, Michael Jackson was supposed to make a song for the film, and I guess it has leaked somewhere. I heard a clip, and I'm like, this can't be it. It was like slower, but Michael Jackson was gonna do a song, but I guess creative differences. Paramount wanted something else. So there were thoughts that it had to do because I didn't realize 1993 was when his child abuse allegations started coming out. So that's so interesting. So it kind of makes that moment in the movie when they're at the Harmony Hut, the kids are in like timeout, right, at camp, and David Krumholtz, Joel, sees the Michael Jackson poster of like Heal the World or whatever, and he screams because, they don't want anything corny. So that's, I think, what was implied. But by the time this movie came out, it started coming out in the news, these allegations that Michael wasn't doing proper things with kids, right? Which now we know much more about it. Mm-hmm. But now that joke has there's like another joke there of why he would scream in horror. So yeah, that's interesting, right? Like a sort of accidental double entendre, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, we at least have Tag Team, which I did see, and maybe you did too, that was nominated for the 1993 Golden Razzie Award for Worst Original Song.
Excellent.
So, yeah, this movie got some highbrow noms, and, we got one important lowbrow Razzie nom. So there you go.
You can't win them all.
You can't win them all, right? You cannot.
He's an adorable little baby.
Fine. Rub it in.
Children, why do you hate the baby?
We don't hate him. We just want to play with him.
Especially his head.
I caught for the first time at the end when they're playing Happy Birthday for little Pubert, the baby, who is so damn cute. I caught for the first time Lurch's head is so big that the birthday hat has to go, the string has to actually go around his nose. Did you notice that?
I did not.
It doesn't even go around his chin. I had never noticed that until today. That's why I do the show. I love seeing those little, moments. But for the first time, right? We see it so many times and you always miss something. But yeah, it's just around his nose because his head is so big. But and that whole great montage of, we get a couple great montages, but one of them is the kids. They're jealous of Pubert and they're trying to kill the baby, and it's kind of stressful. Like they're just dropping this kid. They're things are flying. Now I forget, Jackie. Did you say, are you a sibling? Do you have siblings?
I am.
Now,
yes.
Did you ever try to kill your siblings? Do you remember?
I did not. I was not very kind to them when I was younger. But
are you older?
I am the oldest.
Okay, me too.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then my sister is 2 years younger than me, and my brother is 6 years younger than me. So my brother got most of the sitting on the couch next to me. I reach over and pinch him and stuff that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my sister and I are 4 years apart, and I don't have any explicit memories of trying to hurt her or anything, but this is going to be really creepy. I will never forget watching years later, we were teens probably, watching our home videos on VHS, and we were watching the video of my sister, like a newborn in the hospital, and I'm there with my mom, and my mom is holding her, and I'm really looking at her. My dad had the camera all the time. And my mom goes, so this is your sister, and what do you think? And I'm just very serious. I'm like, and she goes, now you're not gonna hurt her, are you? As if I threatened to hurt her or something. It was not a new concept the way she said that, and the way I'm just like, no, like we had talked about that before. So I guess I'm sort of a Wednesday / Pugsley if we have to categorize. So hopefully I'm not the only one.
You'll meet someone very special. Someone who won't press charges.
But the other montage, which is fun because the next movie I'm talking about is Mrs. Doubtfire, where we get some great montages, especially as Robin Williams trying to be different nannies on the phone. How fun to see Cynthia Nixon in the nanny montage when they're seeing different nannies. That was fun to see way before Sex and the City, right?
I had looked down during that montage and I heard her before I saw her. I was like, that's Miranda Hobbs. And I looked up, I'm like, that is a very young Miranda Hobbs. I even paused it, took a picture and sent it to my family. I was like, Cynthia Nixon is in Addams Family Values for 3 seconds.
Yeah. She's the hippie nanny. She's blonde because she is a natural blonde. This was in her baby's day out work. She did that movie maybe the year after. She did a lot of theater, but so fun to see her and these other weird nannies, but speaking of celebrity cameos, let's go through them. So we have Cynthia, we have Nathan Lane. I forgot, he is so good, and then I feel like he is in full Timon voice because he was about to do Lion King after this. How he is just that it's Nathan Lane, but it's just like a little enhanced in that like sharp, whiny kind of Timon voice, He's so good as the police officer. Who else do we have? I'm trying to remember now.
David Hyde Pierce was the doctor.
Right. And we don't even, because he's wearing a mask, right? We don't even see him.
No.
Forceps.
Tony Shalhoub.
Oh, that's right. Tony Shalhoub in the Macho Man. Oh my God, That's right. And he's right there as like, I forget his name. She calls him
George.
It's Jorge.
Or Jorge.
Yes,
Jorge.
Exactly. Yes. Jorge, one of the sailors singing Macho Man. That's a fun sighting for sure. Yeah, I mean, like we were saying, like even the small bit roles, just like couple lines, if that, all played. But David Hyde Pierce, I'm trying to see, when did Frasier was on? Because I talked about that on the show. Frasier, I think, had just started in 93. So funny, so random. Yeah, and I even noticed, I don't know if you know Charles Busch, famous playwright, drag queen. He's even in the movie, and it's fun. If you ever saw Psycho Beach Party in 2000, do you remember that one with Lauren Ambrose? Jackie. Okay, your homework is to watch Psycho Beach Party. It's super gay. Nicholas Brendan were you a Buffy fan?
Yes.
Yes. So Nicholas Brendan looking so good. Lauren Ambrose, Amy Addams in one of her early roles. Psycho Beach Party. I was in the play years ago. It's a really crazy, zany play written by Charles Busch. But Charles Busch is always like in drag and in the movie as well, and in his own work as various, female characters. But she calls Wednesday tramp when Wednesday gets the bouquet as Debbie throws it. There's like this, woman behind Wednesday and I think Pugsley, and she says tramp, during the wedding bit. But yeah, like, so even like sort of under the radar people have little fun cameos. So it just really keeps things moving and grooving. I have other family members who want to share their love for Addams Family Values, and here they are. Katrina Tapper, Jackie Renee, and O.T. Garcia.
Hi, I'm Katrina Tapper, and I'm just like any modern woman trying to have it all. Loving husband, a family. It's just, I wish I had more time to seek out the dark forces and join their hellish crusade. Oh wait, that was Angelica Huston as Morticia in one of my favorite comedies. This movie is one of the few sequels out there that just worked. It was perfect, and arguably could be better than the original film. Even though this film is decades old now, it's still so relevant today. Upon rewatching, one of the first things I noticed is when the family is sitting in the waiting room and wondering whether the baby will be a girl or a boy. Gomez comes out, and they ask, well, what is it? And he goes, it's an Addams. I feel like that was such a telling moment of the family as a unit. Yes, they're creepy and they're kooky, but they value, see what I did there? Each and every member of their family, regardless of their gender, and it makes this film very forward-thinking for its time. I never got to go to a sleepaway camp, so Camp Chippewa was one of the few examples of what could have been, and as one of the girls usually picked last in gym class, I always loved the revenge arc. As far as favorite characters, there are too many to choose from, but I have to highlight Raul Julia as Gomez, as this film was the last of his to be released in his lifetime. I honestly don't think there will ever be a greater Gomez, and that's a hill I'll die on. Also, Joan Cusack as Debbie Jellinsky, this role was utterly iconic. She nailed it. Costuming was fantastic, specifically her white outfit that she wears during her last attempt on Fester's life. I want that in my current closet. But generally speaking, the entire wardrobe channels my mother in the 90s, so I think there's a sense of nostalgia that draws me to the movie and this character as well. But like Morticia to Debbie, I have to ask the same question for my mom's interior design choices. Pastels?
I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't enjoy hurting anybody. I don't like guns or bombs or electric chairs. But sometimes people just won't listen. And so I have to use persuasion and slides. My parents, Sharon and Dave. Generous, doting, or were they? All I ever wanted was a ballerina Barbie in her pretty pink tutu. My birthday. I was 10. And do you know what they got me? Malibu Barbie. That's not what I wanted. That's not who I was. I was a ballerina. Graceful, delicate. They had to go.
Hey, Mark. I'm so excited you guys are talking about Addams Family Values on the show. It was one of my favorite movies growing up. I don't know why, because it didn't really have any hot guys in it, and that was kind of a requirement for movies that I watched over and over again. But it was something we watched almost every weekend when I was growing up. And Miss Debbie, Joan Cusack's character is probably the best character in one or two. I mean, out of all the characters. And we still say lines to this day that she says in the movie. Like if the kids are in trouble and I'm calling them, I'll call them Fester and I'll say, Fester, get over here. So, and they have no idea what I'm talking about, my kids. They're just like, okay. And then another one of my favorite scenes is towards the end, I think, when she's going to electrocute everybody and she kind of gives her story of like why she's crazy and set off by her parents not getting her the right Barbie. That's probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I mean, there's just so many great ones. Wednesday's amazing. Christina Ricci is just awesome.
Miss Debbie! Deborah!
Well, first off, Pubert's mustache cracks me up
my God.
every time.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And then, like, he sleeps in a Hannibal Lecter mask. And, like, it's just all these, like, little nods that it's blink and you'll miss it, but they're just sprinkled in throughout the whole movie.
Now, real quick about Pubert, something I had forgotten, and maybe the only thing I would critique in this great movie is... And by the way, everybody, you know when you're on IMDb and, you know, it pops up, like the window pops up and it says, what would you rate this? I think of course I just did it and I can't remember. I'm pretty sure I gave it a 10 out of 10. So that's, or at least a 9 out of 10. But the one thing I would say maybe just needed a little bit more explanation. So Pubert is very much Gomez Jr. And then later in the movie, as things are stressful with Debbie and she refuses, we know she's toxic, but she's actually, Fester is in quite a toxic relationship. She refuses to let him see his family. He's hiding up in like the bathroom as she's like showing him, you know, her cleavage to, you know, get him to do what she wants. Very toxic. But so as there's family stress going on, Grandmama tells us that baby Pubert, which is just such a crazy name. Apparently that was an original idea for the name of Pugsley, I saw. The original guy, Charles Addams, was tossing around the idea of Pubert. And, you know, I guess people were like, no, you cannot name him Pubert. But Pubert goes blonde. He has blonde, fluffy hair. What do you make of that bit? Because it's never fully like...
out.
Grandmama says like it's family issues and they're like, oh, Fester, and you know she has the great line where she says, you know, with this blonde hair he could become the president, you know, she said a lawyer, and they're like, no, an orthodontist, the president, and Gomez is like, no, take me, you know, that great comedy. But yeah, what do you make of that whole little subplot?
It is bizarre, but because it's the Addams family, you're just like, okay, I'm fully committed to this.
Right. I'm fully committed to, for a few scenes, the baby has a blonde, shaggy wig, and then all of a sudden he's back to being his normal Pubert self. It's like once he pulls, which I wondered how they did that. I wondered if that was like a real baby's hand pulling that knife, or if they just had like a robot, because then once he gets out he's like crawling and it's very obvious that that's like a little like robot baby, you know. But yeah, once he touches the knife it's like, okay, he's back to being a normal Addams again. You know, the blonde is gone.
He has my father's eyes.
Gomez, take those out of his mouth.
Carol Kane plays Grandmama, and she's friends with Angelica Houston in real life, apparently. Like, I guess they were friends before this movie. She plays, obviously, the matriarch, you know, the oldest living family member. But actually, get this, everyone, Carol Kane is 1 year younger than Angelica Houston. I thought that was funny. Yeah. So, it's that makeup. And I guess, and Carol Kane just always kind of sounds old, you know, it's her kooky voice.
Yeah.
You know?
And like the hair, like Angelica Houston is always very like polished and poised, where Carol Kane's just kind of always out there.
Yeah, she's always like this zany, like older lady with the wacky hair. And it's like, actually, she's younger than some of these others, right? So I thought that was funny. Some lines, we got to talk about lines real quick. Early on, when they're talking about the baby room, it's dark, it's depressing, it's desolate. It says toddler. It's a dream. Like, again, leaning into that dark macabre and how they think it's beautiful.
They're announcing that they're engaged.
And the new romance.
I'm engaged.
That ring.
It was our mother's. She was buried with it.
And Debbie just has a shovel with dirt on it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so good.
I wrote that down too. It's so good. The camera zooms in. I mean, it's funny. Like, you don't think about this until you're older, but like, the camera is doing some great tricks in these movies as well. And I feel like it's an underrated, like, other family member because, zoom in and, I had forgotten how scary, still to this day, it's kind of like disturbing when Debbie electrocutes Fester in the hot tub.
Yes.
Right? That is dark, Would you die for me? Promise. And then, that's spooky for sure. A good Debbie line. Debbie, it's really more Morticia. She says, these Addams men, where do you find them? And I had never caught this before. Morticia says, it has to be damp. Like, what? Like, those are like those blink, like you have to have the subtitles on, oh my God, an iconic line. Wednesday serving such amazing shade. Like, of course a gay man wrote this script. I'm pretty sure he's gay, Paul Rudnick. They're in their bathing suits, Pugsley and Wednesday in these bizarre, old timey black and white bathing suits. Amanda says, is that your bathing suit? And Wednesday, without even a pause, Wednesday says, is that your overbite? Like, oh shit. So good.
Wednesday can read people down, no problem.
No problem. And Christina Ricci, oh my gosh. And speaking of reads, I had read, and this is so gross, when she was, apparently Christina Ricci has said publicly, one of the dumbest questions she ever got on a press junket was for this movie. And she was only like 12 or 13 by the time it came out. And she was interviewed and the person said, have you gone through puberty? Have you gotten your period? What does that have to do with anything? Yeah. And Christina, much like Wednesday, she even said, she's like, I was such a little smartass. I said, no, I'm actually going through menopause. And I'm like, oh my God, yes, queen. Right? Like, oh, genius. So I love that. There's at least a little bit of Wednesday in Christina,
Yes. When Morticia's reading The Cat in the Hat to Angelic Pubert, and she's like reading it, and then she flips to the end, and she just goes, oh, he lives.
Yeah, she hates it so much. She says to him, she looks at him, she's like, are you enjoying this? Or something like that, right? Like and it's so funny because like even seeing Morticia with that colorful blue book, it's like, oh, this is so wrong, right?
I'm Gary Granger. And I'm Becky Martin Granger. We're the owners and directors here at Camp Chippewa, America's foremost facility for privileged young adults.
And we're all here to learn, to grow, and to just plain have fun!
Because that's what being privileged is all about!
And even like just what the Grangers say at camp, Becky and Gary, and canoes. Like they are such caricatures that like they say it. I'm like, oh my God, I remember that. Like that's what's so awesome about, especially movies of this time when we were kids, but these great memorable comedies, the way these actors said the line, it's like it's burned in our brains.
Yes, absolutely.
And also just the iconic moment of how she is unfazed by that massive explosion, right? And Joan Cusack's just, she's looking at her watch and the explosion, she's just looking. And then there's a piece of like debris. Help. Like she is so damn good. I feel like especially Debbie in that moment is like, she gives me like Meryl Streep in Death Becomes Her.
Yes.
Like she gives me She-Devil. Like she's giving me like great female deranged women that are just, I love her laugh when she's looking in the mirror before the explosion and pretending to talk to the police and she fake sobs and then it turns into that maniacal evil laugh, right? Like what a performance,
So good.
My husband was in that house.
You know, even though she's such a bad guy, we stan Debbie. Debbie is a true icon in cinema. Joan Cusack, I need you. I know you're getting older, but you got to do another role like this, right?
Yes.
I need to see her unhinged, loud. I feel like the last thing I saw her in was Shameless. She was on the show Shameless. And,
yes.
right? As like the kind of weird neighbor lady.
Agoraphobic neighbor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so I'm sure she's popped up in something, but she doesn't do as much, and she should. She's so good.
So good.
Right? But yeah, the movie opened up at number 1. It only stayed there for a week, and then Mrs. Doubtfire, which is the next movie I'm talking about on the show, that came in, and you can't mess with Mrs. Doubtfire, right? But it did well. It didn't do as well as the first one, which is a bummer. This movie definitely gained more momentum and, you know, fandom, I think, on VHS. I think we watched it probably on like pay-per-view, like rentals, HBO, Blockbuster, right? So I think it really, you know, it definitely made like 111 million worldwide, but it still was lower than the 191 million that the original made. And it's interesting, Barry Sonnenfeld did say he thinks it had to do with the marketing. They sort of just rehashed, you know, stuff that was shown in the first film and only really showed the family members, not really like a lot of camp, I guess, not Debbie. So he, in hindsight, thinks it just looked a little too repetitive, you know, but still, you know, it did pretty well. It got nominated for an Academy Award for art direction. Wow. Angelica Houston was nominated for the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Musical or Comedy, much like how she was for the first film. So, you know, it definitely got some good noms, some good recognition, and we're talking about it 30 years later. We love it. It's like so good. Honestly, comedies nowadays, I feel like some of them don't even hold a candle to this movie.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We get so much like shit on like streamers that it's like, yeah, it's funny, it's cute, but like, no, this is like, wait, I had to rewind.
Genius.
I'm like, right?
You're going to have a wonderful life together.
Yes, I am.
Well, thank you, Jackie, so very much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for
What
having
can
me.
people look forward to on No More Late Fees? What are you talking about later this month? What can you tell us?
We are going to take a tiny bit of a hiatus to spend Thanksgiving with our families, but the first week in December, we are talking about Ever After.
Angelica Houston connection. Yeah, you gotta.
Houston.
Yes.
So look out for that. You can find us on all the streaming platforms at No More Late Fees, as well as all major social media platforms as well.
Yeah. So I know on your show, you guys have a little rating system.
We do.
So what do you want to tell us? Anyone who doesn't know, if you're not listening to No More Late Fees, you gotta. But what do you want to tell us your rating system, and what would you rate this movie?
Sure. So our rating system is based on Blockbuster. And so we have same-day rental, 2-day rental, 5-day rental, and would buy it or would buy it again. Obviously, this movie was a would buy. We owned it. I still own it. It is a cinematic classic in our eyes.
Absolutely. And that's it, my friends. And oh my God, how could we forget how crazy it was that Debbie put Thing's finger in her mouth? Remember that moment? She like licks his finger. She's such a freak, and we love her. We love Debbie Jellinsky.
He likes you.
I'm good with my hands.
And how funny that Nathan Lane has a good little role in this and then went on years later to play Gomez in Addams Family on Broadway. Full circle, right? Well, thank you everybody for listening to or watching this episode of Release Date Rewind. And thank you very much, Jackie Conley, for chatting with me about Addams Family Values. Be sure to check out Jackie's show No More Late Fees with her co-host Danielle, wherever you get your pods, and check out their great Instagram page too. Also, thanks to our cameos, Katrina, Jackie, and OT. We're one big happy family in this episode, right? Tell your friends about the show if you're a fan, because personal recommendations really are helpful. Plus, you can leave a rating or review. Thank you, Straw Hut Media, Greg Clements, and Kyle Motzinger. And follow me on Instagram at Release Date Rewind to see more content from our chat and from this movie. Next time, like I mentioned before, it's all about the one and only Mrs. Doubtfire. Toodaloo!